Welcome to the Training Them Wisely podcast. I'm your host, Renee Christensen. Training Them Wisely is a ministry that exists to encourage family discipleship and biblical literacy as a family. And today I'm very excited because we're going to have Leslie Nunnery on our podcast. She is a Christian author, speaker, and homeschooling advocate, the co-founder of Teach Them Diligently, a ministry that provides resources and experiences to strengthen Christian homeschooling families. Leslie is also the author of several books on parenting and homeschooling, including Teach Them Diligently, Raising Children of Promise, and Heart School, How Amazing Parents Become Excellent Home Educators. She's also the host of Homeschooling Families podcast. Through her work, Leslie aims to encourage and equip families to raise their children to love and serve God. In her latest book, Leslie challenges parents to understand the homeschooling for the heart of your children is a lifestyle choice that goes well beyond a mere educational decision. It can strengthen your family, increase confidence, and bring peace to your days. This book also gives very practical information on how to use the platform homeschooling affords to build deep, impactful relationships with your children. Hi, Leslie. Thank you so much for coming on the Training Them Wisely podcast. I'm so honored to have you here.
Well, Renee, it's a joy to be here. I love every single time I get to talk to you.
Yes, it's delightful. So tell us about Teach Them Diligently for those people that don't know about it. And I'd love for you to also talk about your podcast a little bit that you have, because I personally listen to it and love it. So tell us about how you started Teach Them Diligently and what y'all are about.
Oh, I would love to. Teach Them Diligently is the ministry that God gave us. We started it back in 2011, which actually it makes no sense reasonably. Teach Them Diligently started as just doing events for homeschool families to focus them on discipleship. And it makes no sense because we had just started that year homeschooling ourselves. So we were so green, but God made it very, very clear when he called us to do this, that the purpose of our making this step into homeschooling was for the hearts of our kids. It was to give us platform for discipleship. And we just wanted to spread that word out and really encourage people in that way. So we did that. We thought we were only doing it for 1 year. We've done it now for 13, 14 years. We've produced, I think it's like 50 total events through the years. God has given us the opportunity to serve thousands and thousands and thousands of families through events, which has been such a joy. As we've kind of matured, our kids have grown. My youngest is now a senior in high school. So most of my kids have launched out and are starting their own lives. But as we've gotten older, God has opened the opportunity for us to do a lot more. So like you noted, we now have a podcast. It's the Teach Them Diligently podcast. It is, we talk all about biblical parenting, discipleship, and then how excellent home education can play into your achieving the goals and the mission that God has given you. It is not exclusively for homeschool families because as Christian families, we all have the same mission. We are to bring our kids to Jesus, shepherd their hearts, give them a foundation for the faith. And that's what we are primarily about encouraging people to do. So we've got that. The Lord has allowed us to write a number of books. I've written several. David's written a few. And we have a membership community to connect moms from around the world, which is just one of my favorite things that God has allowed us to do because I've made some great friends there and seen God work in amazing ways. So, God has just been unbelievably good to open doors and give us opportunities we would have never, ever even thought to ask for.
Yes, and God is so good to do that. He really is. His faithfulness is amazing. So the Teach Them Diligently conferences, I highly recommend them. I go to conferences several times throughout the year because I personally love conferences. And I must say that that's actually my favorite conference that I typically go to. And if you don't homeschool, I've told several of my friends, a couple of them are hopefully coming with us this next year. And they aren't currently homeschooling their children, but there's so many wonderful breakout sessions that you can attend that are all about family discipleship.
Yeah.
And you can just get such encouragement from like-minded believers who are wanting to pour into the hearts of their children and to disciple their children, which is really what both of our hearts are for, is that we disciple these kids and that we have their hearts and we point them to Jesus. So as Christian families, why is it so important that we focus on discipleship?
Oh, that's just my favorite thing to talk about. So now you've just opened a big can of worms here. Now discipleship is so important because that is our primary call as believers. God says to go into all the world and make disciples. Well, he says to go into Jerusalem and Judea and the uttermost parts of the earth. And to us, your home is your Jerusalem. That is ground zero for the gospel work that God has called you to do. So if you are not investing in the hearts of your children while you have those opportunities, you are really you're not fulfilling the call that God has given you. So there's always going to be this void. You're always going to be searching for what is missing. And it's because your primary call you're not doing. But the other thing is, and the reason why it's just critical that as parents we invest in discipling our kids is if we are not discipling our children, somebody is. That is
Yes.
guaranteed. And I very much want to be the one who is speaking truth and guiding the hearts of my children. I don't want media or peers or other families or even honestly youth pastors or anything else doing the primary discipleship. I appreciate other voices that can speak truth to my children, and I am so grateful for ministries to my kids, but ultimately I want to be the one who is really taking control of the hard work for my kids. And that should be the goal of every Christian parent is just to be able to pass our faith along intentionally but naturally to our kids.
Yes, I agree. And that is just so important. So, as you have been discipling your children, I know that they are grown now, but you've been discipling. So, you've had all of the stages that you've been able to disciple through. So, discipleship really is, I feel like, a relationship that we have with
Mm.
our children that we're able to build on, where we have good communication with them, we have their hearts, and then we show them by example of how we're living our lives and being disciples of Jesus how we're following him, and we help to point them in that direction. But what are some ways that you have worked on building those relationships with your children
Mm.
that you've then been able to turn into discipleship moments to point them to Jesus?
I love that is an excellent question. Um, our platform with our kids for discipleship is born largely through those in between moments where we're just naturally doing life with our kids. It's when we get down in the floor and play Legos with our littles and we listen to them talk incessantly about something they're so interested in that we couldn't care less about. And when we are engaging with them and asking about the things that are going on in their life, all of those things that seem disconnected, and that do take a time, and you have to be aware to really make sure that you're doing it. All of those things at every stage gives you that foundation, that trust, that relationship on which discipleship is built.
Mhm.
So, really, discipleship is just an extension of good parenting, which makes sense because God set up this whole system. So, He called you to be a parent, He gave you this wonderful children to do life with. And then by maximizing those moments, those just natural everyday moments, you're actually giving yourself a phenomenal platform to pour into their lives from a faith standpoint and to give them a foundation for a faith that will be their own, that will stick even as they get older and go out into the world on their own.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing that you have done that I've actually started doing now as well, it's something I had not heard about before, but one thing that you've done is you've been doing a legacy Bible. And I know that you've written
Mhm.
a book now to explain what that is, but tell us a little bit about how you're pouring into your older children in this way, and even your daughter-in-law, I believe, right?
Yes, yes,
Your
I'm
legacy
working on
Bible.
hers now. I'm actually almost done. Shh, don't tell her. But yeah, so back when my kids were younger, the details of some of the ideas that you come up with get a little mushy as you get farther away. I read an article, I think it was like a click on Facebook type article. I can't remember where I found it, but I read an article or a story about an elderly lady in a church that wrote in Bibles for some of the different people in the church when she was bedridden. Like she couldn't go out, she was homebound, and she started writing in Bibles. And I was like, that is the greatest idea I've ever heard of. So I took that concept and decided that I was going to create a Bible for each of my children and give it to them on their 16th birthday. And so for my oldest son, I started when he turned about 14, gave myself plenty of time because I didn't know how long it would take. I took the better part of 2 years reading cover to cover through the Bible, praying every time that I came to that copy of the Bible, that God would give me insight into his heart, that God would give me the words to share. And I just wrote, I journaled all the way through. And so there are prayers in there. There are hopes and dreams. There are stories to give him solid examples of how God had worked in our family and sometimes even in his life. Just a lot of things. Some of the times, if it was a difficult concept, I would work it out for him so that when he got there, he wouldn't trip over it. Just all kinds of stuff as the Lord just kind of led in that creation process. I got done about 2 months early. And I thought, ooh, I'm going to pass this around to every man who's really invested. So my husband took it for a little while. My dad took it for a little while. The pastor at our church, some other men at our church who had invested in Camden through the years, they all had a chance to write in it. And most of them just wrote a note at the front or at the back, but some of them actually took the time to go inside God's word and put notes there. And then on his 16th birthday, I presented it to him, not sure how it would be received because, it's not a car or, anything real exciting like that. And I give him this Bible, and God is so good because he immediately understood the importance of it, the specialness of it. I had already kind of made my mind okay with the fact that he probably wouldn't get how much he was going to love it until he was grown and not living with me. But he really did. The other kids immediately started asking if they were going to get one. So I'm sorry. My phone is off. I don't know why that just happened. So my other kids started working or started wanting their own. And so I immediately went into my second son's Bible, which, because his birthday is 2 years and 4 days after Camden's. And I was so sure that it would be really boring because I've just finished this. But I was amazed. I have 4 children. Every single Bible was so different because they are very different children. And I was praying for that specific child as I read through it. So God illuminated so many different things. And I came to know my children at a much deeper level through those. And all of them still carry it. They still read in it. For a long time, when they would have it kind of at church when we were sitting together and they get to a passage where I didn't have anything written, middle of Ezekiel or something, they just kind of look down and be like, oh, come on, where's, what's missing here? But ultimately, that has been a project that really changed my relationship with my kids in a very positive way, has opened a lot of doors, which is why I wrote the book. I wrote it with Tricia Goyer, who also creates legacy Bibles, but she does it very differently. So we wrote a book together so you could see a couple of different approaches. But everybody wanted to know how, how, why. So we wrote this book to just kind of tell you how, but also spend a lot of time telling you why you can do it, even though it makes you nervous. So there's a lot of that. We gave you like 30 devotionals to just kind of get you started. So there's just trying to be a help to people, but that project was one of the most impactful things I've ever done. And so I'm almost done with one for my daughter-in-law. Her birthday is actually in November, so right after this one comes out. And then I will go straight into my new son-in-laws right after that. So very,
That's
very
so
excited. As our
exciting.
family grows, I just get to keep doing more Bibles.
I love that. And I think that there's so many good things that happen as you're reading through the entire Bible. It's giving you a chance naturally every day to speak to your children about what you've learned
Yeah.
about, but also to speak specifically to your child through your writing, what you're learning about them. And I think about how in Psalm 44, it talks about how we're supposed to talk about what God has done. So I love that you include stories as well,
Yeah.
because really, if you think about in Hebrews 11, Sarah considered how faithful God was. So if we're able to share these stories and these memories with our children, the prayers that we have for them, it shows the faith that you have in God. It shows it's and just a personal level that they're able to experience these verses in a way that they can understand it even more and to
Yeah.
see. It shows the importance that you're placing on scripture, the importance that you're placing on prayer, and the value that you're putting in them to spend that much time to read through the Bible and combine those. I just think it's a beautiful thing. I have really enjoyed it, and I'm very excited
Yay.
to finish my first Legacy Bible. So, another thing that you talk about is that it's important to have goals as a family. And that is something we call it our mission statement, our
Yeah.
Christian sin mission statement. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that, why it's important to have goals as a family and to have direction where you're going. So, yeah, talk to us about how and why you do goals for a family.
Yeah, it really is so important because if you don't have goals, like a real structure set up of where you're going, what you are working towards, first of all, you never know if you have any traction, which lends itself very naturally to frustration and confusion and chaos and all of those things because you don't really know where you're going. But secondly, when you have this structure, you're able to more confidently make decisions about these things that come into your life day by day, what you should say yes to, what you should say no to, what is just clutter, whether it be, stuff or things that are in your life, obligations, opportunities. Some of those are great things, but at that season, they're just clutter. And so by taking the time to really think through where you want to go, and then setting up goals that will get you there, it makes your family a lot more successful in getting, kind of moving in that direction, which brings so much peace, confidence. It removes chaos. God is a God of order, and this allows us to function more within that realm. Another thing that I really encourage families to do is, as when you set those goals to go towards your bigger vision, your bigger mission, then also start thinking out of the box with what are the benchmarks that show that you're working towards your goals, because some goals are big long-term things and you're not going to get constant progress on the specific thing. But there are other ways that you can see that you're making progress that may even be counterintuitive to what you think you should be doing. So, for example, if one of my goals is I want my children to leave the home knowing and loving God and people and, having a heart to serve him, then, through the years, I'm going to be trying to maximize my opportunity to pass on my faith with them. Well, one of the benchmarks that I would often lean back on was, if even if my entire day got thrown off because of something and I had to take a detour and deal with something with a single child. So it's like everything else, my whole focus was on this hard issue of this one child. But I could walk away and say, wow, I have been praying for years what was veiled to me would be
Mhm.
revealed. And God just shined a light on it. And we were able to work through, and I got insight into this child I didn't have before. That's a good day. Everything
Yes.
else kind of went off the rails, but I can say that was a good day. And that changes the way that you look back and you lay your head down to go to bed feeling like you've had a good day rather than focusing all the things that you didn't do. And that's a game changer.
Yeah, and it lets you focus on what is the best things to be doing.
Yes,
And it just, yeah, because there's so many things that we can spend our time doing, but is it in line with what we're trying to do as a family? And if
right.
not, and we're running out of time, then that's something that we can push to the side and feel good about it, because what actually matters is the things that are eternal with our children.
Yeah,
And so
100%.
once God gives you that mission and that goal, it just helps you to narrow things down and make life a lot less cluttered with what you're doing. So the last thing I want to ask you about is, you have Heart School, a book that
Mhm.
you've written, and I love it because really it's talking about the heart of children. It's an excellent book. Highly recommend it. And just it does have a lot to do with a tool that we can use is homeschooling, and that we're spending time with our children. But truly, any Christian family, I think, can really benefit from it, because it's talking about spending your time intentionally with your children to
Right.
get to their hearts and to point them to Jesus. So, talk to us a little bit about your Heart School book and opportunities that they can have using that.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, Heart School is a term that we coined several years ago. It just kind of came up in conversation because I said, well, what I do basically is Heart School, not homeschool. And it stuck because that is what we're trying to get people to do. We are trying to help people understand that going for the hearts of our kids is our primary call. Um, you have to make a decision regarding education for your children. So as you approach that decision, pray about it through the lens of what brings your kids to Jesus the best. What is your best tool for discipling your children? That's going to look different for different families in different seasons and all kinds of things. But it's the heart behind the mission. And then seeing, okay, if your kids are in Christian school, how can I use that as a tool for my discipleship efforts? If they're in a public school, a charter school, whatever you're doing, how is that a tool for my mission of going for the hearts and discipling my children? So it really, my heart is that even though I talk about it because my primary audience are homeschool families, and I am one of those, we have a lot of homeschool examples in there, but it applies no matter what you're doing. How are you seizing the moments to actually go for the hearts of your kids? And within that book, I actually talk about 7 attributes, 7 kind of steps that you're going to see in every successful heart schooling family. And that's really what the book is based around is these are 7 things that if you see them in your family, the odds are really, really good that you are successfully heart schooling already. If not, where are the weak spots? Where do you need help? Where do you really need to focus? And so the book will give you some information. It's not a massive, massive book, but I also I have like a master class that's 3 hours or so of content that you can watch and get a little bit deeper. And then we have a parenting intensive where David and I will walk with you for like 9 months and really coach and help your family work through a lot of these concepts. So that just trying to really help families overcome these hurdles that get in the way of them setting up their family culture and their family structure in a way that is very conducive to going for their hearts of their children. And it's going to strengthen your marriage. It's going to strengthen all of your relationships outside of not just with your kids, but the marriage, the relationship with in-laws, church, family, community, and so on. Everything really straight lines when you get these things set up the way that we talk about in Heart School. It's a pretty amazing thing, but it's only amazing because it goes back to what God's word says. It's
Yes.
truly looking at biblical parenting first and foremost, and how with that being your primary mission, how do you set up your family practically to really support that?
Yeah, and I think that's why I love all of your resources so much because they're based on the Bible because we can make plenty of mistakes as people, but whenever we're
Oh, yeah.
basing it in God's word, that's where the truth is. And so I highly recommend everything that you that you have. So where can they find you and find your products and follow you, podcast, all of that? Just give us a brief rundown. I'll put it in the notes, but sometimes I think it helps to hear it as well.
Well, I appreciate that. So our website is teachthemdiligently.net, and everything can be found on there. We have the Teach Them Diligently podcast. We are on Facebook, Instagram. Just search Teach Them Diligently. You're going to find us. We're all over the place. And then we have a YouTube that has quite a few videos and such on it. We also kind of going back to the Legacy Bible. I'll give you a link. There's a printable that just gives you prompts to get you started on creating your own Legacy Bible. So just some things to get your creative juices flowing. So I would love for you to pick that up. I think it'll be a real help to you. But yeah, everything can be found just by going to teachthemdiligently.net. And then you'll see at the menu at the top, you'll see our events, you'll see Heart School, you'll see the membership, which we have available. And then you'll see our books. So everything can be found right there, podcast as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed speaking to you as always.
Well, thank you so much. It's a joy. It's nice to talk to someone so like-minded.
Yes.